It was the dawn of the third age of podcasting, 30 years after the series had launched.
The Babylon podcast was a dream given form. Its goal, to discuss the place where humans and aliens could work out their differences peacefully.
It's a port of call, home away from home for established fans, newbies, John, Blaine, and guests.
Humans and aliens wrapped in 2,500,000 tons of spinning metal, all alone in the night.
It can be a dangerous place.
Wait, what?
But it's our last, best hope for peace.
This is the story of the last of the Babylon stations.
The year is 2024.
The name of the podcast is
Babylon 5, 30 years later. Greetings, programs. We are here to kick off our coverage of the second season of Babylon 5. By we, that's myself, Blaine Dowler, and my co-host here, John Wilson. How you doing, John?
Blaine, I almost didn't recognize you. You have a completely new face, and I'm surprised you're still going by the same name, because that's not what I was told before I got here.
Oh yeah, I thought about switching to my legal first name instead of going by my middle name, but hey, here we are. Alright, so yes, we are here to discuss points of departure.
Second season, baby. First episode of the second season. And it's something.
Yeah, it aired November 2nd, 1994. It was the first episode produced in Season 2. The production order for Season 2 is going to be much, much closer to the broadcast order than Season 1 was. There's only a couple that deviate from that broadcast order, and then only by a week. So things like Episode 7 was produced as number 8, and then 7 aired as number 8. All right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 14.
Interesting.
17, 16.
With 8 and 7, you have the broadcast break between them, so it's interesting that they swap places.
Yeah, but again, there's no control over the scheduling, just like JMS. He made comments on it in the commentary coming into Season 2 about how P10 would schedule that season finale after such a long break. So the one that was designed to get you ramped up and excited for the next season becomes more like a part of the next season, and then the season enders are just regular day-to-day episodes.
Well, all the time between the penultimate episode and the last episode of Season 1 just gave the viewers that much time to watch 9 episodes of He-Man.
This is true. Yeah, possibly more than the 9, but yeah. Anyway, actually, after Season 1, they don't just move that season finale right before the next season. They do the last 4.
Wow.
So our last 4 episodes of Season 2 are going to air after a break. So we go May 24th, and then jump to October.
Oh, that's a massive skip from May to October. Wow. That's even bigger than August to October. That's the biggest gap in the show since the pilot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's substantial.
Wow. And we'll be filling that gap. We won't talk about it yet, but we do have lots of cool things we're going to be doing during the course of Season 2. And that gap will have several episodes along those lines.
Yeah, minimum 4.
Yeah. I guess there's no real reason to keep it too secret, because I was actually kind of excited about this season is whenever the tie-in media starts. And I don't know about you, Blaine, whenever I get into a franchise, I love me some tie-in media. I've read a lot of Star Trek books, Doctor Who books, Star Wars books, lots and lots of stuff. So I do enjoy some tie-in media.
Yeah, I'm always excited to check it out, but sadly, the quality of tie-in media is often very inconsistent.
It can be, but I don't know. Even so, I still like having the experience, you know? Like there's a lot of Drek out there in Star Wars books. There's a lot of Drek out there in the Star Trek books, Star Trek. But, you know, knowing what kind of stories were being told, you know, enjoying the things that people enjoyed as the stuff was coming out, and just kind of getting that whole experience. To me, it's about the experience necessarily more than the enjoyment. I enjoy having done it, you know?
Yep. Yeah, I get that. All right, so shall we get into a plot summary of this particular episode?
Unless you're looking for some point of departure from the episode, let's do it.
All right. So we start on the Agamemnon. It is an Earth Force cruiser, and Captain John Sheridan seems to be reassuring people that some hijackers are taken care of, but if something comes up and they return, just give us a call and we'll be here. He then gets a communication from General Haig there is a rogue Minbari warcruiser, one that does not like the fact that the war with Earth is officially over, and how they were forced to surrender. It is 2 jumps away from Babylon 5. So John Sheridan is being asked to head back to Babylon 5, and one more thing, but we don't get that one more thing. It cuts away to Ivanova, who's running Babylon 5, because 5 days ago, Commander Sinclair was transferred back to Earth, as we learn in her voiceover. And she's walking through the Zocalo with a number of aliens behind her who are all distressed and upset about something. They get into the tube together, and by the time they get out of the tube, Ivanova has them cowering in fear while she is making her opinions of their complaints very well known. So she gives us a recap of the status quo that we had last week, which would have been much more useful if we'd had the multi-month gap between the episodes as the creators intended. But if you were one of the people who came in with the new lead, Captain John Sheridan, then this also serves as a third pilot following the gathering and Midnight on the Firing Line. So Ivanova then gets contacted by General Haig, who's kind of jumping the chain of command a bit to say, yeah, changes are coming, you should know. Sinclair has been permanently reassigned to Minbar as the first Earth ambassador on the Minbari homeworld, and John Sheridan is coming in as the new captain of Babylon 5. This does not go over well with some of the Minbari, because he is known to them as the Star Killer. He is the one human captain who managed to take out a Minbari cruiser. He eventually recaps the details, but those details are going to be slightly rewritten in one of the few continuity errors on the series later on to push it further out of Earth space to make the whole narrative make a little more sense down the road. But bottom line, yes, in the entire war, humans had one victory against the Minbari. John Sheridan was the victor in that. He led that victory. And the Minbari warrior caste in particular are not happy that he still exists. They took that as a very personal affront that he killed so many of their finest warriors. Now, one of the Minbari who's on the station, there are 2 new ones. One of them is not thrilled that Sheridan is captain, but he wants to keep the peace because he is secretly a member of the Great Council. He goes to see Lanier, who is still holding vigil over Delen's chrysalis, or her cocoon. And he says, okay, if this guy shows up, if the rogue Minbari are actually coming to Babylon 5, you need to tell the station personnel what we told you. He then meets this Minbar, or the Minbari, who is now captain of this rogue war cruiser. And Minbari do not kill each other. This is part of their culture and was part of the culture in the original pitch. So I think that part was grafted onto the changelings and the founders, because that was an attribute among them on Deep Space Nine, but that's an aside for another day. So yeah, they talk about it, and he leaves hoping that these Minbari do not show up here. They do. So yes, the leader of this rogue vessel is very interested in how to get through Babylon 5 and what's on the station. He is apparently targeting Delen, when our Great Council member warns Sheridan and Ivanova that these guys are on the station, and this is how he knows. He's seen him. This is what he's all about. It's Sheridan who realizes that Delen is the most likely target, and they apprehend him there. Now, he had a gun on Lanier and did not fire. So Sheridan realizes this guy could have killed both Lanier and Delen, but didn't. There's something else going on. There's another plan. And unfortunately, he's unable to get him to admit to that plan during the interrogation. That rogue war cruiser shows up with full complement. They are coming in, gun ports open. They are acting hostile. That keeps Sheridan's attention in command and control, while our Minbar captive takes a suicide capsule. And it's Sheridan who realizes, wait a minute, with the verbiage they have, the female who's in command of this cruiser is saying you'll make him a martyr. I just point out it's female because the script did not specify gender, and with the new casting agent, they are getting as diverse as JMS wanted in the first place. That was a conscious choice. So Sheridan realizes that all of this was about trying to push Earth to make the first move, to the point that even when their fighters go past the Earth Force fighters, they do not open fire, they do not take a shot, and Babylon 5 sent a distress call to another Minbari cruiser that was in the area, that they knew would be in the area out in hyperspace. And that cruiser comes to basically do pickup and cleanup. They are still not happy that Sheridan is the captain. Now, during all of this, Lanier came to Sheridan and Ivanova and told them what he was asked to tell them and what he knows, which is why the Minbari surrendered at the Battle of the Line. Their generations were getting lesser and lesser. Fewer Minbari have been born into each generation for the last 2,000 years, and they are not achieving the greatness that the previous generations were. It seems their greatest souls have not been reborn into the next generation, as they believed they would be. And when they took Sinclair aboard with their first close contact with a human, they were, using means that we will eventually see, able to determine that he was possessed of a Minbari soul, as were the other humans that they captured and studied. So their memories were wiped, they were released, and because one Minbari does not kill another, they surrendered. But fearing the reaction the general populace would have to this information, they did not explain why. So this is why Sinclair was requested to be the first ambassador of Minbar. This is why they surrendered. That's it. Humans are the new homes to the Minbari souls. And the episode closes with Lanier over Delen's cocoon, saying he did not tell them the rest of the prophecy, where really these are two halves of a single race that must unite to defeat the great enemy, which is rising again. And when Lanier leaves, the cocoon cracks, and the episode ends with Sheridan giving his good luck speech that he's been trying to give since he arrived, but things kept happening, to an empty CNC, because for good luck he has to give that speech within 24 hours or it doesn't count. Should probably mention that we are briefly introduced to a new character, a pilot, Warren Keffer, who was one of the pilots that was out and was not comfortable holding his fire when the Minbari were coming, and he has a talk with Franklin and Ivanova at the end. So, did I miss anything?
Not that I noticed. Lots of important exposition here in addition to the events of the episode. And it's actually one of my notes that we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, pretty grabbing introductory episode for the second season.
Which is funny because JMS describes it as being sort of a low-key character piece compared to the episodes it's sandwiched in between.
I did feel like it was a character piece, and I was actually wondering if that was going to be an overall tonal shift we were going to see coming into the second season. Because honestly, with the opening credits, focusing more on people's faces and their characters rather than just the actor names, and then the sort of overall lighter tone of this episode, despite all the drama and danger, they just feel like it's a bit more of a lighthearted feel. And I wondered if that was going to be an indication of this series' overall change, or if that was just the calm before the storm.
A lot of that was very deliberate, and it was actually orchestrated to help audiences accept Bruce Boxleitner in this role.
Okay.
So prior to this, he had obviously been the title character in Tron. That's probably what he's best known for, in which he shared the screen with Peter Jurasik, who played an accountant program. But because Tron, when they were in the computer, they wanted to maintain deep focus, which is artificial. So before they had digital cameras, you couldn't have a very deep room with the entire thing in focus, despite Orson Welles doing a very good approximation in Citizen Kane. So what they did was they actually filmed each actor individually and then composited them together in that scene. So yes, Bruce Boxleitner and Peter Jurasik were in Tron together, but they did not film together. Boxleitner then went on to play the title Scarecrow in Scarecrow and Mrs. King, the secret agent Lee Stetson, for 4 seasons. Peter Jurasik had a guest appearance in that series.
Okay.
Yeah, he was known for being... He wasn't asked to show his dramatic chops prior to this, really. It was more lighter fare. If you wanted to write him off, he could be written off easily as a pretty boy.
Pretty and smiley.
Yeah, so they could go against type from day one, or JMS decided, no, let's lean into that at first, and then so people accept him for who he is, and then make the other changes more gradually. So here he seems more concerned with, or more focused on having an actual honest-to-God water shower and access to fresh fruit than, a lot of the general machinations on Babylon 5.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because some of my thoughts I wrote down as the episode was going, and so I sort of, amended them mentally as I was going along. But the first impressions I got of Captain Sheridan are that he's a bit of a Chad, just kind of, there and happy-go-lucky and smiley and very different to Sinclair, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just felt like a tonal shift. But yeah, as you say, they're making him embraceable so that we can then go and make everything really terrible for him later, I guess. Speaking of commanders, I was thinking a lot about the transition from Sinclair. So he's recalled to Earth with no explanation, and I honestly expected that we would get no explanation either, at least at first, because that's how a lot of these things go. Certainly with our other cast changes, we got little more than a sentence about their departure. But of course, Jeffrey Sinclair's role in this world is so significant that I'm glad we got more information. I'm glad we got more of a description of who he is in this world and why he may have been pulled away.
Yes. The real world details that were not available while Michael O'Hare is alive is that O'Hare was struggling with schizophrenia and the stress of being the lead in a series, even one that was very well managed and very well planned, was still enough that he had a hard time managing the condition. So that's why they left. There's arguments about whether he quit or was fired, but really everyone knew the situation could not last. So when they sat down to say, this is causing problems, his reaction was, I know, please let me finish the season. And because that wasn't known when they filmed Chrysalis as the 12th episode in the production order of season 1, they had no way to set it up in that season finale. So that's why the characters were a little blindsided at the start of this, is because just the production crew didn't know it was coming, and they didn't have an opportunity to set it up. But Sinclair's story is not done. It will continue both on screen and in the tie-in media.
Same for Catherine Sakai. She's gone, but I know that there's attention paid to her story in later tie-in media as well, possibly on screen too.
Yeah, so this is all coming together, and JMS actually referred to it as a blessing in disguise, because the blueprint, or the outline he had, required a little too much coincidence to be happening with one character, with how it all ties in with different people.
Protagonist syndrome?
Yeah. So the fact that O'Hare had to leave allowed him to split O'Hare's plans into two characters, which made it a lot more palatable to the audience.
Care to speculate on what choice he'll make in the remake, assuming he gets to finish the remake? Do you think he'll do some version of his original plans for the commander, or do you think he'll do another departure story?
The only thing that has been announced in terms of the remake and the background is that the pilot for the new show already has Captain John Sheridan in place.
Oh, okay. Which, if you're announcing to the world who knows Babylon 5 as a whole, we have cast Captain John Sheridan, or we have a role for Captain John Sheridan, that probably makes a lot more sense than we have a role for this one guy from the first season that you might have forgotten was actually there.
Yep. So we'll see. He calls anyone a reimagining, so I don't know how much he'll have in common. I'm actually expecting like the Hitchcock Man Who Knew Too Much levels. I don't know if you have seen either of the Hitchcock Man Who Knew Too Much movies.
I've not.
Okay, he made one version in Britain, starring Peter Lorre. It is not tied really to the book. He loved the title of the book, so he bought the rights to it. But the book is actually a collection of 8 short stories, and the man who knew too much is the detective. He's a Columbo-like detective who goes after the rich and famous, and he solves the crimes that they commit. But the reason they call him the man who knew too much is he realizes people this rich and famous don't go to prison, so he didn't even try to arrest them. He just solved it, and he's depressed and lamenting and saying, look at what these guys got away with, and telling 8 separate stories to friends at various times. The novel is about, or the movies are both variations on the idea that someone knows something that is incriminating, but he doesn't know what it is. He's overheard a part of the conversation, but without context, he didn't know that anything was wrong until the criminals try to kill him for it. So then he is on the run and trying to solve this mystery while he's doing it. And he's just a regular guy. He's not a professional detective. So apparently Hitchcock was not totally thrilled with the version he made in England. And then when he was in North America, he was switching contracts between production companies, but he still owned the first studio, One More Film. So he went to his new writing partner and said, "Hey, did you ever watch this movie that I made in England?" And the scriptwriter said no. So Hitchcock said, "Perfect, don't. Here's a 2-sentence description. Go your own way." So this screenwriter who made the second one, he literally took a 3-sentence description of the movie and wrote his version of that movie. So there's very little in common with the original. So that's kind of what it's a long way of saying that's what I'm expecting from Babylon 5. So we're going to have a station named Babylon 5. We'll probably have some of the same alien races in prominent roles. And we know John Sheridan is the captain, and that all surviving cast or regular cast members from the original series, if they want to appear on it, they will have roles for them. But anything else, at the time of this recording in February 2023, no final decision has been made on whether or not it's going forward, which JMS considers a good sign. That means it's not dead, and they're probably waiting to see what other pilot scripts come in before they decide whether or not they're going ahead with the pilot.
There was a thing you said recently that the license for HBO Max had expired, and he was looking for a home for it on something like Tubi or something, which, by the time this airs, could be a completely different situation, but...
Yeah, it is going to Roku and Tubi, the remastered versions. So I don't know when they're appearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. So that was about the remastered versions of the original series.
Yes.
Okay. My bad. I thought that was about the upcoming series. Never mind. That's irrelevant then. Okay.
Yeah. But no, so for those of you who are watching along at home, well, we started with John watching on HBO Max and me watching the versions that I bought on iTunes. It recently left HBO Max and is heading to Roku and Tubi, but I'm not sure when they're going to appear, and if that will also be true in the international markets or if it's just a US thing. So I know Tubi does have some content available in the US that's not available in Canada.
Well, after it left HBO Max, I went over to Amazon to see what the seasons would cost and found that I had bought the first season back in the day when I first tried to watch through this. So I still had first season and I could watch Chrysalis because I watched Chrysalis after the series left. And so then I bought season 2. So I now own digitally seasons 1 and 2 of the show.
Okay.
But be that as it may, Ivanova. They don't talk about it, but she evidently knows Captain Sheridan.
Yeah, they don't go into detail. There is one line that says she served with him at the transfer point on Isle.
Mm-hmm.
Or served under him. So he's been her commanding officer before.
And she must really like him because she smiles more in their first conversation than I think she has done the whole show so far.
Yep, probably. And that's part of what they were trying to do. JMS figured, we've got a new captain, we need to help audiences accept him. So he took a character that audiences accepted and said, oh, him? Yeah, he's going to be good.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good storytelling choice. And not saying that Ivanova should smile more because, she can do what she wants. Just notice that she did.
Yes.
But we were talking about Sinclair, and I found it interesting, he was going to be kind of the focal point of the show, and like you said, almost to a fault. And then there's a very unexpected and dramatic turn behind the scenes where he leaves the show, which leads to an unexpected and dramatic turn in the character's story with him being called to Minbari. And yet it feels completely natural. It feels like this was the plan. Obviously, it's the second season premiere, so you can probably guess it wasn't the plan. But the story just folds it in. And it gets integrated very nicely. And you said that we'll see his story more. I'm curious to see how that unfolds. But I was impressed by how natural it felt that he was moving along. And I assume that since he and Catherine were going to get married, that she went with him.
Yeah, that will be confirmed, at least in the tie-in media. I don't remember if we get on-screen confirmation, but yes. So he and Catherine are happily married on Minbar, or They are on Minbar. They are happy together. I don't recall if they've actually had the ceremony yet or not at this point. It's only 8 days, so.
One of the scripting things that made me smile is that Sheridan is practicing his speech and gets to the part where Abraham Lincoln said something, and then Ivanova's like, okay, we're ready for you. So he comes out and gives his speech and gets to the part where Abraham Lincoln said something, and the security call comes in, and I'm like, what did Abraham Lincoln say? And then we get to the end of the episode and find out that his quote is where the last best hope thing from the opening intro comes from.
Yep, that's exactly it.
So that was pretty neat to see.
Yes. Jerry Doyle considers this one of his favorite episodes from a production standpoint.
Because he got to sleep in two scenes and that's it?
Yep, his entire contribution to this was to take a nap.
Yeah, Hartnell likes that. David Tennant liked that in The Christmas Invasion.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make the job easy for that week.
It does indeed. If you want to call in sick, just, fall unconscious in the first scene and you're good to go. I thought it very interesting from a overall world storytelling perspective that we went from a station commander personally selected by the Minbari to someone whom they flat out dislike. And that reversal, I think, should be interesting, especially given the change in the opening narration saying that this is the start of the Great War.
Yes, which is interesting.
So that's all like, okay, we are no longer friends, evidently. And if it's not Earth and Minbar, it's somebody. Somebody's no longer friends. Speaking of somebody, there were two very notable absences from this episode.
More than two. One comment I will make on that opening before we move forward. In the original broadcast, they used the season 1 opening for this episode. And actually, more than this episode, I'll say why they were still using season 1 and when they made the switch when the time comes.
Okay.
This opening had spoilers in it and not just a mention of the Great War.
Oh.
But you may not notice it. I don't know about the Amazon Prime version that you saw. It's probably the same as this one. The remastered version here, they actually edited the opening sequence to remove the spoiler.
Okay. So there are a couple of lines from that opening sequence that got pulled from the remastered version to avoid too many spoilers.
They made changes. Yeah, I'll detail what those changes are when they are no longer spoilers.
Okay. But yeah, it does still show a version of the new opening. I don't like that. I wish they had retained the previous, because it's like you had to choose to go into the file and edit the opening sequence and replace it with something else, and I don't like that. It reminds me of The Adventures of Superman, the old George Reeves TV show, and how the DVDs of that, the opening credits and closing credits for season 3 and season 2, whenever they change the color, are from the last season of the show. And they just have the same ones over and over again. And so if there was any difference in the opening credits between season 3 and season 6, you'll never know.
Yeah, I suspect that the change is only going to be temporary. Like I said, I'll talk about it in more detail when it comes.
Okay.
So.
Reminds me of that Smallville season where we thought Chloe was dead for 3 or 4 episodes, and then she turns out not to be dead, but they hid Alice and Mac's name from the credits for those first 3 or 4 episodes. What if they just threw her in the DVDs of those episodes? What if they just used the rest of the season's opening credits, and you think she's dead, but oh look, she's in the opening credits. Oh well. Doesn't matter. Yeah. I don't like when they make changes like that. There's no reason to.
Give it time. Yeah, this is kind of the opposite of the Buffy problem, where Joss Whedon promised, yes, when we kill a character off in this season, it's going to be a character you see in the opening credits. And then they put that character in the opening credits for the first time in the episode when they kill them off.
Wow.
It was a recurring role, but had just never made it to the opening credits yet. So.
But yeah, 2 notable absences. I realized there were other absences, but the 2, to my mind, most notable were Jakar and Londo, since last episode focused so heavily on them, and then to have them completely absent from the episode, no mention of developments, except for Ivanova's rundown of the subplots that Jakar has mysteriously left the station.
Yeah, and that is where Jakar's plot was going. Was
right.
That he was off and don't contact him. So Jakar's absence, that one feels completely story-driven. In terms of the contracts this season, they actually made some changes. So one of them was adding Warren Keffer as a semi-regular, as that pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And he's played by Robert Ressler. They also wanted, or JMS really wanted to add a new ISN reporter this season. But by the time they added Keffer, at the network's demand, it was P10 that wanted a hotshot pilot on the show. So he was put in to satisfy P10. They replaced the cast with John Sheridan. I don't know details, but I suspect just based on the resumes up to that point that Bruce Boxleitner cost more than Michael O'Hare. Again, pure speculation on my part. But he could have asked for a higher salary. And then the other semi-regulars. So your Mira Furlan is Delenn, right? Dr. Franklin, Talia Winters, all of these characters, they were upped from 8 appearances to somewhere between 11 and 13, depending on the character. So they just didn't have the budget left to put in the regular ISN reporter.
Right.
But given the way journalism has changed in the 30 years since this came out, I suspect if the new series does go to production, I think we are going to see that ISN reporter on the station. It's something he wanted to do the first time, and I can just imagine there's so much more commentary available for it now than there was 30 years ago.
I did like seeing Robert Ressler as the new pilot character, because I had seen him back in A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, which is a big struggling with your inner homosexuality metaphor. And he played a muscly, muscle shirt, hard body Ron Grady, who the main character asked him to please watch me sleep and make sure nothing bad happens. And there was just lots of metaphor going on in that movie. And yeah, he was in that, and I remember him there. Seeing him here, I was like, because he was in the opening credits, which, as you said, he wouldn't have been on the original broadcast. So I saw, oh, who's this guy? So as soon as he showed up on the screen, I started paying attention. If I hadn't seen him in the credits, I might have wondered why we're giving attention to this person I've never seen before. Because it's not really a character introduction, like, here he is, I am person, watch me do things. He's just kind of there in a few scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he doesn't feature super prominently. And again, that's because he was forced on JMS. And
right.
We'll see how JMS reacts to having things forced on him.
Okay, fair.
Yeah. So IMDb also says he is known for playing Max in Weird Science, Tommy Hook in Thrashin', and Richard Lawson in Sometimes They Come Back. So he's still working. I mean, we're recording in February 2023. His most recent credit is 2024.
He was in Sometimes They Come Back. Really stupid story joke from my childhood. So the short story anthology that Stephen King story appears in also has the short story that was the basis of the film Maximum Overdrive, which is just called Trucks. And in the table of contents for those stories are listed back to back. So you have Trucks. Sometimes They Come Back. And a friend of mine and I just thought that was the funniest thing in 6th grade and laughed about it for a long time. But anyways, that's neither here nor there.
Okay. So other guest stars we have, as Kalain, we have Richard Grove. This is his only Babylon 5 appearance. But yes, he is the captain of the rogue Minbari warcruiser. He also shows up in 2 episodes of Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, and any Superman connection should be mentioned on a podcast with John Wilson.
Yes.
Yes. So he's in the first 2 episodes of season 4.
He is also voicing, wow, they're making a TV series of Heir to the Empire, and he is the voice of Joruus Sabaoth, the clone character from the original Timothy Zahn trilogy. And I am intrigued by the fact that even is getting made. Wow. He's done a lot of voice work, but of course his face is very memorable. He's been in a lot of things over the years, and it's hard to see him and not feel like you've seen him 100 times before, because you probably have.
Yeah. We also have Robin Sachs as Hedron. So we will see him in this character or in this role again, but we'll actually see him eventually play 3 different characters, or 4 different characters on Babylon 5 when we count in the TV movies that are coming later. Comic book connection, he was the voice of the Silver Surfer and a couple other characters in the 1994 Fantastic Four animated series. He also plays Ethan Rayne in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I'm sure the purely coincidentally named General Valen in Star Trek Voyager in 2001.
Okay.
So season 7, episode 14, he's General Valen.
That probably is a complete coincidence. In Valen's name. I actually never got that far in my Voyager watching. I still have like 2 seasons of Voyager I've never seen before. So I need to do that.
Yeah, season 5 and 6 are actually really strong seasons.
I think I've probably seen all or most of 5, because that's when Deep Space Nine was still airing concurrent. And I know I made it to the end of Deep Space Nine in my Star Trek Watch Everything journey. I just don't think I got very far in season 6.
Okay. Well, yeah, I found... I originally gave up on Voyager during season 1 in the original broadcasts. They got so much of the physics wrong. And most of the characters did not really grab me.
I gave up during season 7 of 9's first season.
Okay, season 4.
Yeah, that's when I stopped watching.
Okay, well, I did rewatch the whole thing later, and I did find seasons 5 and 6 are fairly strong seasons. And one thing Voyager, I think, has done better than any other Star Trek series, just to give it credit, is to start you in the middle of the action. So you don't see the inciting incident in a lot of the episodes. They're already in the thick of it, and they're telling you how this started with exposition.
Right.
And Robin Sachs is also best known for playing Ceres on Galaxy Quest.
Yes.
He is the lead villain under all of that makeup.
Right. He voiced Ratchet on the Transformers films, which I like, because I like Ratchet. He's a good character.
Other guest appearances, we have Robert Foxworth as General Haig.
I'm sorry, he's the one who voiced Ratchet. I had gone ahead in my list.
Okay.
Robert Foxworth voiced General Haig. Robert Foxworth, who played General Haig, voiced Ratchet on the Transformers films. My mistake.
Okay, yeah. So he's, we will see him again, though not as often as originally planned, but we'll talk about that when the time comes. Okay. Which will have a Twin Peaks connection.
Really?
Really?
Now I'm scrolling.
You won't see it there.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a story. I will tell you when we get there. So Jennifer Anglin has this as one of her 18 IMDb credits. She is Diron. So she was the female commander of the rogue Minbari ship.
Okay, so she speaks on the monitors at the end of the episode.
Yeah, it's a brief appearance, but yes, you might have noticed in the closing credits, Mary Jo Slater is no longer the only casting agent. Now there's 2. So we mentioned before how she was trained in a system that suffered from systemic racism, and she was having a hard time breaking that training. So they added a second person to help with that. Which I think was nice, because a lot of shows, if they weren't happy with that element, they would have replaced her. Instead, they said, okay, we're going to help you work through this with someone who can mentor and teach you the part that you want to improve in.
I noticed that in the CNC, our usual officer was not present today. I don't know if this is her day off, but we got a different person giving a notification of the security issues. Our unnamed character, who should have gotten a name because another character who had just as little significance did get a name. And the only difference between the two, to my mind, is their gender.
Josh Cox eventually got a name because off camera, the cast loved him and lobbied hard for JMS to give him a name to make sure that Tech David Corwin would have regular work.
Okay.
Because the other ones were day players, and if they showed up, they worked. If they wanted the day off, they got the day off. So it was just, they had a pool of people to put in that chair. So, the woman with the slightly Russian accent, I think, just wasn't here today, but I think, if I remember correctly, we do see her again. But, yeah, so the only one of those that actually gets the name is David Corwin, and they were lobbying hard to the point that even though they know JMS is a dangerous person when he hasn't had his coffee in the morning, he showed up at work one day, and Claudia Christian was waiting in his office and refused to leave until the character got a name. So he got the name David Corwin because JMS is a big old-time radio fan, and Corwin wrote a lot of fantastic old-time radio shows.
Gotcha.
So that's the reference there. And there is another character who was recast, but that particular character does not appear in this episode. So we can see in the credits that Natoth is now played by Mary Kay Adams.
Okay. Because you see her face in the credits, because they do faces now. I was like, did they change her makeup? Or what? But I did notice a difference. I had not internalized the previous actor's name, so I didn't realize there was a different actress in the role.
Yeah, and she was very happy with the show, but the heavy makeup was having an impact on her skin. Mm. And it is, in Hollywood, a woman's skin, the quality of that skin will make a huge impact on how many other roles she gets. So she chose to leave because there was a concern that, as great as this job was, it might become her last job because of the way the makeup was affecting her.
Gotcha.
So she left on good terms. And I believe they bring her back without makeup in another role, if memory serves, down the road. So no, Natoth has been recast as Mary Kay Adams, who is also familiar to Star Trek people, or Star Trek fans. She is Grilka in 2 episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
She's also one of the Duras sisters, isn't she?
I thought that. I'm not seeing it. I'm going to look again, but no. She's
just the photo of her at the top of her page. No, she's Grilka. Okay, she looks a bit like one of the Duras sisters.
Yeah, so she was in season 3, episode 3, The House of Quark. So she is the Klingon woman that Quark was going to be forced to marry, who shows up in seasons 3 and 5.
Yeah.
So
that episode of season 3 would have aired by this point. I have not watched it yet. I'm trying to get my Deep Space Nine caught up to my Babylon 5. But yeah, we're about a half dozen episodes into season 3 of Deep Space Nine at this point.
Yes. So House of Quark aired in 94. So it would have been the same time.
Yeah, a few weeks before, like I said.
Yeah, there we go, October 10th. And then, it'll be, when it comes back and looking for Parmak in all the wrong places, it's different. I wouldn't be surprised if that Deep Space Nine experience helped her get this part. When you lose an actress, because of the impact it might have on their skin, having someone who says, yes, I've already done the makeup and I'm okay with it, is probably considered a good thing.
Yeah.
She's also appears in the See No Evil, Hear No Evil movie with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder as Dr. Bennett, and 65 episodes of Guiding Light as a character whose first name is India and whose last name seems to vary.
Yeah, when you don't establish somebody's surname or middle name and it's only used infrequently, you can forget what it is. Like whenever Stan Lee had scripted 2 or 3 issues of Amazing Spider-Man and then took several months off because they canceled the series, and then came back to script a second story for issue 1 because they were going to full book format and forgot Peter Parker's last name.
Yes, so it's fixed in most reprints, but if you have an actual first issue of The Amazing Spider-Man, in the second story, he's Peter Palmer.
Yeah, because that first story was drawn and scripted for Amazing Fantasy 16, and then it didn't get put in Amazing Fantasy 16 because that book didn't exist. It instead got moved to Amazing Spider-Man 1, and they had to go back up to fill out the pages, and that was the first new Spider-Man story to be done for the new series. And yeah, Stan Lee had forgotten the kid's name. Mm-hmm. So that's a thing.
Well, Stan Lee admits he was notoriously terrible with names. That's why he gave so many characters alliterative names, because if he remembered one, that would help him remember the others. That's why we have Reed Richards, Susan Storm, Bruce Banner.
And Peter Palmer.
Yeah. Matthew Michael Murdoch. And yeah, that's why Bruce Banner became Robert Bruce Banner, because at one point he did forget and called him Bob Banner. And then one of the first no prizes was someone saying, "Oh no, the Hulk just misremembered that Robert Bruce Banner goes by his middle name."
Right.
But yeah, the character's name, looking at it, she's got 65 appearances on Guiding Light, 3 as India Spalding, and the rest are India von Halkine, although there's a couple of times when they seem to have spelled that last name incorrectly in the credits, where they have I before E instead of the much more common E before I. So she's listed as 3 last names on the Guiding Light, but 2 of them, I think, one is a typo of the other.
What was the last name that was a typo?
Von Halkine, Most of the time it's spelled Halkein. Sometimes it's Halkien.
Because if it's von Halkien, then those are two very different pronunciations. And IEN in Germanic pronunciations would be keen. EIN would be kine.
Yeah, because when you have two letters together in German, the second vowel makes the long sound. Anyway, so 51 minutes into the recording, and who knows how long it'll be when we actually edit, let's get through our League-In session.
Well, I kind of already brought some of that into the earlier discussions because I've, forgot that we were going to talk about characters. So I've already said quite a bit about the episode. And also as it relates to the characters and where they are coming into the second season. Captain Sheridan he's an interesting change. I already feel, I wasn't sure at the beginning of the episode, but by the end of the episode, I feel like, I'm okay with him, which is probably exactly what JMS intended in the way that he sculpted the show. He has a lighter tone than Sinclair, but like you said earlier, that was also intentional as a starting point. He just seems more personable. Sinclair, at the beginning of the series, whenever he acted personable, it didn't come off right for me. And so whenever he was more serious and more, administrator, that's whenever I found him more believable. Over the course of the series, and almost immediately actually during the first season, O'Hare's performance, to my mind, became a bit more, I keep using the word believable, but I can't think of another one. But here, Sheridan, I don't know. He's different. He has a different tone. He has a different role, a different dynamic with the world as far as the Minbari not liking him. And I'm finding the shifts to be intriguing as we get into, I was going to say the second chapter, but one might almost say the series proper after the first season's prologue.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, watching this feels more like the Babylon 5 I remember, and largely it is because now we have Sheridan instead of Sinclair, although it is interesting because, as I've said before, the fact that this was planned out means they could put in some major character arcs, and some of them are just getting started. So yeah, this is John Sheridan, but the emphasis is on aspects of John Sheridan that will not be the emphasis or the focus a few seasons from now.
Right.
It's not inconsistent. He will get there, and some of it is just that's already in his character, but the circumstances we saw here didn't really get him to show it. Although we see some of it, right? His ability to identify this guy as a Grey Council just because he knew that one. He knows the Minbari culture well enough to know, yeah, this caste and the warrior caste, they don't intermix. If they knew each other, this guy's a bigwig. I'm betting he's Grey Council.
Which is a definite shift from the super secrecy of the Grey Council as it was presented in the beginning of the series. This guy just knows what's going on there.
Yeah, well, I think by now Sinclair's reports have probably confirmed its existence.
Oh yeah, he's read the reports.
Yeah.
The mention of the Tragati, I didn't quite realize at the very beginning when they first mentioned it that I was referring to the ship. They just, saying the Tragati's been spotted, whatever. And with the TRI and the Minbari emphasis on triangular things, I was just wondering if that had influenced the naming of the ship. Having rogue Minbari is pretty cool because we hadn't seen that before. Minbari seem to be, even though it's a divided culture between the religious and the warrior castes, they also seem to be pretty cohesive,
Yeah, it would be, I think honor is huge with them, and it would be dishonorable to ignore the commands that they receive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the Minbari are very good at putting their personal feelings aside to follow order, and to follow the orders and maintain the status quo. So yeah, the rogues are probably not that common.
What else? Couple of little things. The Minbari cruisers, I'm pretty sure, are a new design we had not seen before, and they kind of look like fish, which to my mind kind of goes with the sort of watery shape to the bone structures on their heads. And I rather liked them, actually. I like the Minbari cruiser design.
Yeah, we did get a really good look at them this time, but we have seen this design before a couple of times. All the flashbacks to the Battle of the Line. This is the cruiser design.
Okay, I remember there being large ships that were looming over our fighters. I didn't remember this being the design of them.
Yeah, I think this is the best look that we've seen so far, because I think before, as you said, they were so close up, you couldn't see all the details.
Mm-hmm.
But once, on the second time through when I'm familiar with the series, it's, oh yeah, that is the ship. We're just only seeing this piece of it.
Right. And I laughed whenever the guy's like, they're on an attack vector. They are flying toward the station, which, yes, is probably an attack vector, but also could just be we're coming toward the station, because that's what you do when you want to go to the station. So I just kind of giggled at that.
Yeah, I'm thinking it probably means that they were aiming for parts that were not docking ports, but were more mission critical. Right.
Maybe, but they're so far away.
Yeah, but the ship is also large. So
that's true.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, it might be jumping to conclusions, but yeah, the gun ports open, we know could also be a sign of respect, but their their targeting systems were active.
And that's
the distinction between last time. So yeah.
I don't have a lot else on the individual points of the episode. I mean, we have a lot. We finally get our understanding of what exactly happened with the Minbari. The mystery that was building throughout season 1 just kind of get dumps on us in season 2. And I wonder if that would have been the case if we had continued with the Sinclair story. If that would have continued to play out, or if it's more like, well, Sinclair's done, so might as well tell you what that was all about and then move on with our lives.
I'm not sure where I read this, because I reread the notes specific to this episode this morning and didn't come across it. But I want to say that I have read that JMS said that had O'Hare stayed on, we still would have learned that information in early season 2, just maybe not episode 1.
Okay.
But we would have known it by episode 8 or 9.
All right, so he was basically nearing the end of that being a mystery and more ready for it to be knowledge for the world. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. I don't want to really skip Last Best Hope, but there's something in giving form to the dream that actually, we've already mentioned it.
We can get to it there when we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the Minbari dynamic building, that's, building our world, and the prophecy that Delenn is trying to force is hinted at again here. Since the Minbarian humans are evidently two halves of one race rather than two separate races, the need to work together when now there is an even larger divide between us because of the new station commander. And the cocoon is opening at the end. And I thought it was interesting to have liquid coming out rather than like a body part or a hand or something. It means that probably the actress for Delenn didn't even have to show up to work that day. And I would not have expected fluid leakage to be the first result of a cocoon opening, but also I've never seen a cocoon open. So what do I know?
Yeah, let's hope it's not completely like the caterpillar butterfly, where really the caterpillar's entire central nervous system gets consumed and the butterfly grows a brand new one and doesn't remember being a caterpillar, because it's really just a new animal.
Let's hope it's not that dramatic. But yeah, like I said, solid start to the second season. Lots of interesting things going forward, and I'm intrigued. I am intrigued.
All right. So how about your last best hope? What was the standout character or character moment for you today?
The fighter pilots, the Star Furies, having to stand their ground as the Minbari fly toward them. That was more of a story moment than a character moment, because it kind of encompassed a lot of things. It encompassed Sheridan giving orders that no one understood. It involved the fighter pilots, including our new character, standing their ground. It involved the Minbari obviously trying to provoke the humans into firing so they could have that as an excuse, and then just flying on past when that didn't happen. All of that together I just thought was a pretty great moment in the episode. And I guess if you want to pin it on a character, I would say that's on John Sheridan for giving that command and everything falling out like it did.
So with this, it's not my standout moment, but Ivanova has a line, I can only conclude I'm paying off karma at a vastly accelerated rate. It's one of the most frequently quoted lines from the show. I actually have it on a sweatshirt, and it was actually put in as something that JMS's wife, Catherine Drennan, who wrote an episode in season 1, and we'll hear from again because she wrote some of the novels. That's something that she just says. So JMS put it in Ivanova's mouth in this particular episode.
That's pretty great. I like that.
Yeah. So for my standout moment, I like it's not even really one moment, but the analytical mind we see of Sheridan. So deducing that this guy is a Grey Council member, deducing what the rogue Minbari's plan is, figuring out that there was a bigger plan because he didn't kill Lanier. Those were good. So I think that's it. It even edges out Lanier saying, if you're going to kill me, do it. If not, I'm busy. Or that exact quote. Let me see if I can find that exact quote. When,
if you're going to kill me, otherwise I have a lot of work to do.
Yes, yeah, the exact words here. If you're going to kill me, then do so. Otherwise I have considerable work to do. But no, I think it's just Sheridan's, his analytical mind. So we can see here, he is not just the lightweight that we're used to. He's from Box Lightyear. He's able to put the pieces together and figure out what's going on. And Box Lightyear has shown a little more range since then. He's still working, not just with the Tron franchise, which he keeps coming back to, but he also appeared in the Orville as president of the Federation, or the League of United Worlds there. And he appeared in Space Command, created by Mark Scott Zicree.
Oh, that's probably connected to this in at least a tenuous fashion. Very cool.
All right, so from there, I think we are ready to give form to the dream.
I hesitate to guess on anything because it feels like we've just started a new chapter. And so there are some elements here that are definitely, seeding the future, but just, in general. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so there's, like you said, it is starting a new chapter. It is serving as kind of a third pilot. So a lot of it is going to be relevant coming down the road. Right? Obviously, the new commander, his history with the Minbari, that's a given. Right? The fact that he is the Star Killer and they're not happy with it. The fact that Sinclair has been reassigned, and specifically to Minbar as an Earth ambassador, is going to come back. Right? I like the fact that Garibaldi is not completely healed. There would be a lot of other shows. By the time the season 2 premiere is done, they go back as close to status quo as it would be. So most other shows that have had him healed, or at least enough that next episode he could be his old self again. But other elements that we should draw attention to. Yeah, we know Delenn is coming out of the cocoon. We do know that, yes, the Minbari view Earth and humans as two sides of the same race, and they will need to unite for a coming conflict. That is information that is going to be important coming up in the relatively near future. So it is in the first half of season 2 when we need to know that. So that's why we were going to get the explanation of that shared souls, because otherwise that explanation doesn't make sense if you don't know what happened with Sinclair in his missing 24 hours. So that piece is relevant. It's also relevant, I briefly touched on it in the recap, but I do want to point out that we did not see the entire conversation that Captain Sheridan had with General Haig.
Okay.
So
I had assumed that his one more thing was, you're going to go command the station now. But evidently there's more.
There's more. A lot of it I didn't file because it's, clearly we're setting up the new season and the new plot lines. So we don't need to point that out when so much is here. I will also say there is more foreshadowing than is obvious with Sheridan in terms of his experience with the Dalai Lama, in terms of the specific Abraham Lincoln quote that is part of his speech, and even in terms of the name of his previous cruiser.
Agamemnon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all foreshadowing at one level or another.
All right. Stuff to look forward to.
And something else to look forward to is our coverage of Revelations coming up a week from now.
Yes, Season 2, Episode 2, Revelations will be here next week. And, I don't know, I felt like through the course of the first season, getting to the end of that season and the beginning of this season was sort of like a milestone. And the fact that Sinclair was leaving the show coming into this season is the only thing about the future of this show that I knew. I know nothing else, not a single solitary thing about the storylines coming up. So it's like, all right, I am ready for the ride. I have no idea what the revelations are coming next week. I don't know if we're going to go to John on the island, the 1st century CE, or if these are different revelations. But yeah, I'm here for it. Let's go.
Okay. Yeah, so join us in a week's time.
What if they're the same John? the Apostle John and John Sheridan. It's the same guy.
Well, the person that's in that, it is not a coincidence that Joe Straczynski wrote a show where both lead characters have the initials JS. In fact, when they were casting it, John Sheridan was John Strider in a Lord of the Rings reference as a temporary name, and then he would pick a proper last name based on who they cast in the role. And that was a whole thing, because he said, this is what I'm looking for, and then P10 said, okay, these are the actors we want, and there was very little overlap between those lists. JMS wouldn't say which actors P10 was looking for, because he said there's a lot of them are very good actors, but they just were not good actors who were also right for the part. So he doesn't want to seem like he's knocking them.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's John Michael Sheridan. Because then it'd be Michael like J. Michael and also John Michael like I am.
It is John J. Sheridan.
John J. Sheridan? Darn it. But then you have John J. They have a historical reference. So very cool.
Yeah, actually the Sheridan historical reference was put in because Bruce Boxleitner is a bit of a Civil War nut, I guess. So apparently the name Sheridan would have resonance for him. As a Canadian who hasn't spent a lot of time studying the U.S. Civil War, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to guess that someone named Sheridan had a significant role to play.
Well, I can tell you a civil war is when you have a war between different factions of the people within the same nation. So that's what a civil war is. And we had a pretty big one back in the 1860s. I know that you up in Canada might not realize that, but there you go.
Yeah, that much we knew. So, and going through the Best Picture winners, that's one of my issues with Gone with the Wind. My big issue with it is that it seems to, well, the omniscient narrator refers to the leader of the Northern Army as the Great Invaders, and he was portraying slaves as being quite happy with their roles, and just, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that,
Gone with the Wind's a whole thing.
Yeah, we know who won the fight, but it's like, one team being better at killing the other team didn't actually change any minds. So there's still a lot of people, at least there's attitudes in the South that were prevalent in early 20th century media that says, yeah, we were in the right. But that is a completely different can of worms that we don't necessarily want to open right here, right now.
Right.
Yeah, so we will see Revelations next week. Originally aired November 9th, 1994. And in the interim, if you have feedback, if you have ideas and thoughts that you're just desperate to share, we gave you several ways to do so. One of them is by email. You can send your email to babylon530yearslater@gmail.com using letters or numerals.
You can also go to our websites where the show is posted. It's the first of which is my own website, johnreadscomics.com, where you can see my various podcasts that I've done over the years, including this one. And just click the episode and click comments and leave a comment.
You can also leave comments at bureau42.com, which is home to all of my podcasts. And there is no H in Bureau.
I was thinking about that as you were talking. I was like, I didn't say the no H. And let's see. There's also podcatchers. So we check reviews on Apple Podcasts as a matter of course. However, if you would like to leave a review for the show, we appreciate it very much and would like to thank you on the air. So if you use another podcatcher besides Apple Podcasts and would like to let us know that you left a review and have it read on the air, just please do so through one of the other various forms of communication, and we'll go find that and thank you on the air here.
And the last place that you can leave your comments is on our YouTube posts. So you can head over to the YouTube channel. The comments are curated, but I will be checking them regularly. And yeah, we'd love that feedback in whichever form is convenient for you. I would just suggest no carrier pigeons. It gets cold up here in the winter.
Yes, they might not make it. And it is definitely onsetting winter, both as we're recording and as this is coming out. We're both in either the beginning of winter when you're hearing this, or at the middle of winter as we're recording it. So, yeah, get in touch with us.
Yeah, definitely the middle of winter here. The snow that fell in October is still on the ground. Because that's the way it works when you don't go above freezing for very long.
Right.
Thank you for listening.
And good eating to you.